It's time for Watts on Wealth Radio with Barry Watts and your host, Ralph Hipp.
Welcome into this weekend's get-together on Watts on Wealth, and along with J. Barry Watts, the main retirement wealth designer from Springfield's Wealthcare Corporation, I'm Ralph Hipp. We're glad you check in with us every Sunday on all things financial and dealing with your retirement in the Ozarks or wherever you plan to be. So to get us started, Barry will help us identify some of the basic challenges that are on the landscape and on the horizon this year, and some key opportunities here in 2025. So kind of the lay of the land, Barry, and you've got a lot of land to cover from what I understand.
Well, we do, Ralph. In fact, it's good to hear from you today, by the way. Glad to be on the show with you.
Me too.
You just got back from Florida.
Right.
And I'm leaving later today to go to a conference of financial company CEOs down in Mexico. And so I'm glad that you and I could get together and get this show worked on into that narrow space right after you got back and before I leave on my trip. So we'll have a good time today.
Yeah, anytime we can get an hour and with our friends here, it's awesome. Barry, as I mentioned, we're going over some of the key economic challenges we might want to be watching out for in 2025. I kind of say jokingly, well, in Washington and Jeff City, nothing going on here. Pretty quiet. Keep moving along, folks. Nothing to see here, is there, right? But I'm just kidding. But we talk about these every week this year. What are some of the big challenges we face in 2025?
Well, I think one of the things that we always have to keep our mind on is inflation. We got a little dose of that a couple of years ago when we saw inflation up in those 7, 8, reaching toward 9% ranges. And it's amazing to me, Ralph, the number of people who are sitting on CDs paying 4% and think they're keeping up with inflation. Now, the fact of the matter is today, on this very day, if you had a 4% CD, inflation's only about 3% today. So you are fine. But if you look at it over long periods of time, certificates of depreciation have not kept up. Oh, did I say that wrong? Certificates of depreciation? CD, certificates of deposit. Yeah, I like my answer better.
What do those really stand for? Yeah.
Certificates of depreciation have not kept up with inflation. And so there's talk that inflation is going to increase as a result of Trump's tariffs, but that's just talk. The Fed didn't buy it, and that's why they held interest rates steady when they met just a couple of weeks ago. Now, the truth be told, Ralph, is nobody knows for sure what will happen or when it will happen, but it doesn't keep some of them from talking boldly and loudly, proclaiming at the top of their lungs what will occur. And it kind of reminds me of that phrase, often in error, but never in doubt. Well, that's the life of many media personalities and many financial advisors as well. And so, Ralph, we want to avoid that because inflation's one of the big things that we're going to have to keep our mind on.
And Barry, what do you think about economists getting together, giving their opinion about things?
Well, it happens. And, when you get three economists in a room together, you know what you have, Ralph?
What do you have?
4 opinions.
4 opinions?
4 opinions.
Yeah.
So you can't depend on what those folks are going to do for you. They like to talk about market volatility. I think that's something that we're going to experience. We've had a little dose of it here recently. And I think market volatility is always going to happen. We'll see it again somewhere this year as the year progresses. And I want to say to you, don't be stressed. Companies are actually experiencing record earnings. Now, that doesn't always mean the stock market's going up. Sometimes companies can experience record earnings while the stock market goes down. And some people say, well, yeah, they're experiencing record earnings, so that's why we should be taxing those companies. Now, stop right there and listen a moment. When you tax those companies more, who are you really taxing? You're taxing yourself. Why? 2 reasons. First, if you tax those companies more for whatever product or service they're providing, guess what happens to the cost of their product or service? They just raise the cost, so you have to pay more for that product or service. And secondly, if you tax those companies more, if you're a shareholder in those companies, and hopefully you are in your retirement accounts, well, then we're taxing you more. So you wind up hurting yourself in the process. Mm-hmm. I think when we consider market volatility, Ralph, what we have to keep in mind is that it's a roller coaster versus a merry-go-round. The roller coaster starts way high and goes way low and is kind of dangerous to travel on, in my opinion. I don't like roller coasters. But as I've said before on the show, if my daughters ever give me grandbabies, I'll take them to Silver Dollar City down there near Echo Hollow and put them on the merry-go-round, and we'll ride round and round, and the little horse will go up and down, and that'll be perfect. at my age, Ralph, at your age, Ralph, at the age of most retirees, you need to be off the roller coaster and don't get on anything that has any more up and down to it than the merry-go-round.
Very good. Barry, I want to hearken back to a headline and take you back in time to Sam Walton down in Bentonville on Walmart. They said, stack it high, let it fly. That's how we're going to make our money. But we had just the other day a huge drop in the market, largely based on Walmart falling short of its projections for income for the quarter. So with the market not liking uncertainty, I don't know if just the Walmart factor played into that. We've had some huge drops in the Dow, and then we had that all recovered back in the next day. So we keep an eye on that. And do you think one thing can tank the market for a day or two?
Well, yeah, one thing can. I don't know what that one thing has to be. I mean, obviously, when they flew the airplanes into the buildings in New York, that was just one thing, but it sort of tanked the market.
Big thing.
So yeah, I mean, Walmart's announcement could cause everybody to kind of skitter to the side, but all Walmart said is, we didn't make as much money as we thought we were going to. So people interpret that and they say, well, the outlook is not as positive as we think it's going to be because look, people aren't spending as much money at Walmart. Well, that was one day and one time, one period of time. I don't think it's really relative. The last I checked, Walmart's aisles were pretty full of shoppers, full of carts stacked deep again, and people are standing in line to get to check themselves out. So I don't think that that's a harbinger of bad things in the stock market.
And of course, Barry and I have mentioned, don't make any knee-jerk reactions and get with Barry and talk to him. And let's get the number out there to talk to Barry. Have your own conversation. 417 around Springfield, 200-3500 for the Wealth Care Corporation, 417-200-3500. Barry and I are getting a lay of the land, what's on the horizon this year, talking about some of the challenges facing us as retirees. The bond markets, Barry, they're signaling they expect interest rate cuts this year of around 4%. What are some of the ways the rate cuts on those could impact us in retired life?
Well, that circles back to the conversation we were having, Ralph, about inflation and the fact that certificates of depreciation don't keep up with the cost of living as it rises. We happen to have a client, not a client, he's a person who came to us, I think, from the radio show and wanted to talk about his situation. And he had several $100,000 all sitting in CDs. And he was very comfortable with that because he said, it's safe. I'm making 4% or whatever it was. And he was not thinking about what was going to happen with the cost of living increasing. And so if the bond markets tell us, and they do seem to be saying that right now, and the Fed seems to be indicating that probably, that we're going to see interest rate cuts, that means that when he goes to renew those CDs, they won't be paying 4%, they'll be paying 3% perhaps, or something like that. And so what happens when that occurs is interest doesn't keep up, and suddenly people who've been living on the interest don't have as much interest to live on. And that is the problem with using one thing in your retirement portfolio. Now, we're not against having CDs in a retirement portfolio. That's an okay thing to do for a portion of that portfolio. In fact, Ralph, everything that you invest in should only be a portion of your portfolio. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't have all your money in any one thing.
That not having all your eggs in one basket. Very true in financial planning as well. Barry,
what Will Rogers said.
What did he say?
He said, if you put all your eggs in one basket, watch that basket.
That's right. And we haven't even gotten to the price of eggs. Who could even have a dozen eggs to put in one basket? They're $1 a piece right now. I wonder what Will would say
Ralph,
about that.
We've got chickens, so it all works out for me and Kelly at the farm, but we had a great catastrophe this week.
Yeah. And by the way, I love Will Rogers and from Claremore, Oklahoma. Not too far down the road.
But Ralph, were you listening? I said we had a great catastrophe this week.
Oh, well, what was your catastrophe? Let's get into that.
You know, Ralph, I don't think you're aware. Kelly has got a new puppy. She now has a 5-month-old, no, he's not a lab, he's a golden retriever.
Okay.
And his name is Marley. And I got to tell you, he's a lot of dog for old people. Mm-hmm. And we're asking ourselves right now how smart it was to adopt a puppy as opposed to a senior dog who already kind of knew the ropes.
We have done that here as well. We have a high energy puppy in our house. Yeah.
Well, as you know, they just need a 10-year-old boy is what they need.
Sure.
So Marley, not having a 10-year-old boy and us not being able to always keep up with him, He decided the other day, we keep a fowl on the farm. We've got a flock of chickens. We've got a flock of ducks. And he decided the other day to take after the ducks, and he killed his first duck.
Oh.
So that means he could have killed a chicken. And you know what chicken eggs are going for these days. So now we've got a high-risk thing going in the egg markets. And it's all Marley's fault. So that's something that we're dealing with out on the farm in Rogersville these days.
Is he kind of like a Marley and Me, or would that be the name of your movie?
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons we considered not giving him that name is if you remember that dog in the television show, he was kind of trouble, and we were a little afraid that this dog might be trouble, and I would say so far it's kind of worked out that way.
Let me get in another question. We're going to hit a little break here shortly, Barry, but wrapping all this up for us, we're looking at what is out there to get in our way, our hurdles, and eggs at about $11 a dozen is one of the things we have to deal with inflation. How do you suggest we consider changing our investment strategy as we get into retirement, maybe this year?
Well, it's interesting. I had a friend come in a few weeks ago who became a client of ours, and he's in his early 60s, ready to retire, and he was had his foot fully on the gas, full steam ahead. And I had to coach him on why that might have worked all these years. He's been accumulating money for retirement, but why it wasn't such a good idea now that he's prepared to retire. So even though we have a booming stock market, and I kind of expect that that's mostly going to continue, it doesn't mean that a retiree should be fully invested with his foot on the gas. And the reason is because of what we call the sequence of returns problem. You see, if you retired this year, and let's say you start taking 4% out of your investments, and then let's say the markets turn down, which they do from time to time, and let's say the market lost 15%. Well, now you're down 19% total, 15% market loss plus 4% that you withdraw. So now you've got to recover that. And if it happens 2 or 3 years in a row, you could easily find yourself trying to recover 50%. In fact, if you lost 50% of your account value, and that has happened before in the markets on multiple occasions, earning 5% in your account, it would take you 14 years to recover the 50% you lost. And Ralph, that's if you quit taking money out of the account. If you lost 50%, it would take 14 years for it to climb back to where you lost if you stopped taking all money out of the account and you're able to earn 5% on it. So the point is, when you retire, you don't have time to deal with loss. You don't have time to make up for loss. So instead, what you should do is take a more conservative position. And we help people do that at the Wealth Care Corporation.
So analyze your situation and let Barry help you analyze it also at the Wealth Care Corporation. Friends, that phone number to have that complimentary conference, your opening session with Barry, 417-200-3500, 417-200-3500. With Barry Watts, this is your host, Ralph Hipp. You are listening to the Watts on Wealth radio show. We're also on TV, KY3, and all of them. So be sure to check your local listings, and along with the TV show and the radio and Barry's book, Watts on Wealth, you will really have a good handle on your financial situation and your retirement. So give them a call, the Wealth Care Corporation here in Springfield. Time for that first break here. A lot more left to go on the Sunday morning show, and we'll be back with more right after this.
The pace of inflation may change, but it never disappears. How might it affect your retirement nest egg? Get the answers by calling Barry Watts at 417-200-3500. Once more, that's 417-200-3500. Do you think you'll pay lower taxes in retirement? Really? Many people go into retirement assuming that, but end up paying as much, if not more, in taxes than when they were working. How taxes can affect your retirement is one of the chapters in Watts on Wealth, the latest book written by local tax strategist and retirement designer Barry Watts of the Wealth Care Corporation. Barry takes you through the many tax considerations you should make before you retire. To get your free copy of Watts on Wealth, the book, call 417-200-3500 or go to wattswealth.com. The book is full of actionable retirement tips and strategies Barry has gathered from his more than 30-year career in helping families just like yours retire successfully. Get your free copy of Watts on Wealth, the book, now by calling 417-200-3500 or go to wattswealth.com. Advisory services provided through Wealthcare Asset Management, LLC. If you're pondering the longevity of your retirement savings with questions like, is my nest egg sufficient? Or how long will my retirement funds last? Consider scheduling a session with Barry Watts. Text VISIT to 417-200-3500. Again, that's text VISIT to 417-200-3500 now to set up your appointment.
Friends, one of the key things going on in Washington is new employees and some longtime federal employees getting fired. People who've just come on board in the last 1 or 2 years, or even generals who have 1 or 2 stars. They're gone. Another big thing is taxes, of course. Let's focus on the firings as our main topic of discussion today. A good financial advisor helps you reach your retirement goals. A poor, or let's come right out and say it, a bad advisor can really hold you back. You might say the wrong financial advice is worse than going it alone and DIYing it on your retirement. Barry, let's get into this. Do you think that's fair to say? To do it alone might be better? Is that a little too harsh of a criticism?
Well, Ralph, it's certainly true that bad advice can hurt you, and we see a lot of bad advice. But before we talk about bad financial advisors, I just want to ask you a self-reflective question, and it's this. Is there any chance that you might be a bad client? Because if you're going to hold your financial advisor to a higher standard, you need to hold yourself to the higher standard. I'll tell you why this comes up in my mind, Ralph, is I had a bad client. This bad client called me, and he was mad. He was mad as an old wet hen. And I couldn't even understand what he was mad about. And finally, one of the complaints that he brought up is he says, well, you just don't communicate with me. I'm like, let's see, I'm on the radio every week. I'm on TV on 4 different channels every week. We send emails every week. And oh, by the way, we had called him from our office 15 times over the past 3 months.
Wow.
And he wouldn't answer the phone or return our phone calls.
Okay.
So you tell me who the problem is. And when I brought that up to him, he said, oh, well, I don't ever answer the phone. Okay. Well, what am I supposed to do? Send carrier pigeons? I mean, should I drive out to your house and knock on the door? I mean, how am I supposed to communicate with you if you won't answer the phone?
That's
He
right.
said, well, you could send me a text. I said, well, let me show you where we sent you a text, and you didn't respond to that either. So anyway, the point is he was just wanting to grumble, and he should have picked something better to grumble about because the truth is we'd been trying to reach him and he wouldn't answer the phone. So I think that's the first question is, are you a good client? And then it's fair to look at your advisor and see if you think they're doing a good job. I would say if your advisor isn't regularly rebalancing your portfolio, if they have not built an income plan that shows what kind of money you're going to be receiving every year in retirement, if they aren't doing tax planning, I mean, literally taking your tax return in hand and modeling how they can make that tax return look different, if they haven't recommended that you protect your principal in some capacity, well, then it's probably time for you to at least get a second opinion on your portfolio and your overall retirement plan, because it could be that you have an advisor who's inadequate.
So a bad client and a bad advisor, and that's a double bad mix. But Barry, it's good to point out about a bad client. So, when you get these calls and text messages, if you're reaching out to Barry, call him back. Call him or call him back, 417-200-3500 at the Wealth Care Corporation. How can people tell if their advisor just isn't right for them? They might be really good financial people and they do answer their calls, return their phone calls, but they're not just a good fit for your financial situation.
Well, I think there are several things to consider. First of all, are they holistic? Meaning, do they deal with all of the issues you face in retirement? Taxes being one, long-term care being one, estate planning being one. Income is going to be really, really a serious thing. Or do they just sell you financial products? Are they salespeople? Or are they truly advisors? That's one of the questions that I would want to drill into. Do they primarily work with retirees? So retirement planning is a specialty. Or are they people who just focus on, we just manage the investment, we make the account grow, we don't care if you're retired, whether you're not retired, doesn't matter to us, we just want your account to grow, and it'll grow 3 years out of 4 maybe, but the 4th year is really a rough one sometimes. That's probably not the right kind of person for you to be working with. Do they understand taxes, and are taxes central to what they do? At the Wealth Care Corporation, we are a tax-centric retirement design firm. We've got CPAs on staff, enrolled agents on staff who represent people before the IRS, folks who really know what is going on. And so those are some important things to consider. I've had people tell me, I love my advisor, but I just feel like I've outgrown them, and they don't offer the full suite of services that I now need at this stage in my life. So literally the conversation is, I think I've outgrown you. And that's possible because it could mean that their advisor is not keeping up with the times and staying up with the current trends and making sure that they have the gifts and skills and so forth that are necessary to bring the best quality advice to their clients. That's why we are continually training our advisors, sending them to conferences, helping them understand new things, buying them new tools and resources to use so that we can give the best possible advice to the clients of the Wealth Care Corporation. And we'd invite you to, consider becoming one of those possibly by coming to see us, having a chat with us. It doesn't cost anything to do that for the first time. And we just have a conversation to learn more about you and see what you need and help you understand kind of what we do and see if there seems to be a fit. And so if you'd like to do that, what I want to ask you to do today is just pick up your phone right now and send a text, texting the word visit, VISIT. Just text visit to 417-200-3500. That's 417-200-3500. Text the word visit today, and on Monday you'll get a call from one of my staff, and they will set up a time for us to have a conversation, and we'll see whether or not there are things you need that we are able to help you with. And if there aren't, we'll tell you.
Barry, in your answer, I was thinking of your 6 steps to retirement confidence, which you're so well known for. The 6 steps you guide them along once they have that first conference with you by calling. And I was wondering, on the 6 steps, do you also, when you're working with somebody, you kick it into the next gear? You shift it into second, third, and fourth, and fifth gear, and you raise your performance with them to a higher level. Does that happen almost all the time? Like we need to go to a higher level with this client and really show them what we can do?
You need to go to the level that's appropriate. For example, there are people who have no tax problems at all because they don't have much money. And so there's not a lot you can do for that particular situation. They don't have to go to a higher level. But in general, what people are getting from their advisors is they're in general getting money management is all. And for the price that they are paying for money management, they're not getting all the extra things that we do for them at WealthCare. They're not getting any tax consideration. They're not getting tax strategy work. No one's helping them learn how to totally avoid capital gains, how to pay the taxes on their IRA for as little as 6% in some cases. Nobody's helping them think about income. That's one of the big things. Most financial people just want to talk about, wow, look how good our fund did and how it grew. And it'll grow for you too. But, having a growing fund is not really all that important. The question is, how do you transfer those funds into income so you'll have money in your mailbox every month throughout retirement? That's what we call sitting on the porch money. And so, there are a lot of people who don't have that kind of service, who aren't reaching that kind of experience. And we try to provide for clients something to touch on everything that they may need to do. In fact, Ralph, I'm just going to put this out there for fun. There's something I'm even considering doing right now. We haven't done this. This is not a service we offer.
Okay.
But I'm thinking about doing it. I'm thinking that one of the things that retired people need is funeral planning. They need someone to help them plan for those final events, and to figure out how they're going to fund those and what's the cost going to be and where they're going to have it done. And so one of the things I've considered, maybe in addition to all the other 6 steps we put together for people, is putting together a department that just helps them do end-of-life planning. It's kind of part of estate planning, I guess, but it's more than that. We're talking specifically about now how you're going to pay for their funeral. So I don't know if we'll ever introduce that concept, but it's something that's been on my mind lately, and I just announced to the world that we're thinking about it at least. But the point, Ralph, is I'm trying to think of everything that a person has to deal with when they're my age, your age, and beyond. What are the things that are coming down the road that they have to have a plan for? And let's help people lay those plans and get that work done. I think that's the kind of service that people deserve from someone who's in the retirement business here in 2025.
Terrific, Barry. And with all the things you help them consider, have you found there are some specific issues that they overlook, that are overlooked by the typical broker or advisor back to them?
Well, taxes is the big one. I mean, taxes is just huge. And you ask the average person who sits in a financial advisor seat of some type, ask them a tax question, and quickly their answer is, oh, well, I don't know anything about that. You'll have to ask your CPA. The interesting thing is at WealthCare, I've got CPAs employed at WealthCare. I myself am an enrolled agent, meaning I can represent people before the IRS like an attorney or like a CPA does. we're very focused on the impact of taxes in retirement. That is one of the most significant dangers to your retirement. I like to say, if you don't get the taxes right, nothing else really matters. And so most financial people want to talk about, the great performance of their fund, but they don't have advice when it comes to taxes. And I'm here to tell you the most important advice that we probably give out week in, week out is tax advice. And it's a part of what we do as we're managing retirement plans for our clients.
With all these complicated complexities of investment and taxes and retirement planning, it's tough to know if our advisor is doing a good job. How do we figure out if the advisor we have is on the mark for us?
Well, I think, Ralph, it all involves getting a second opinion. You have to invite a credentialed expert, and those are a little bit hard to find. You have to invite a credentialed expert to dissect what's going on in your retirement plan, not just your investment accounts, but your overall plan, to look at your taxes, to look at your income plan. You do have an income plan, don't you? A plan to get you income for the next 30 years of your life once you're in retirement? If you don't have that, I think you're not getting the advice that you need. And so I would encourage you to get a second opinion. We're happy to share those at the Wealth Care Corporation, to sit down. And in fact, I had a guy I just ran in today who told me he had $1.5 million with one of those big TV brokerage firms that says, we do better when our clients do better. And he was going to a meeting with those people. And I said to him, well, we'd be happy to do an analysis on your portfolio and maybe show you some things about what they're doing that you're not aware of. And so that's what we do, Ralph, is we give people second opinions and help them see from a different perspective. And we'll do that for anybody who calls us at 417-200-3500, 417-200-3500 is the number to reach us at the Wealth Care Corporation. Today, if you call, you'll get a voicemail because it's Sunday and people are home with their families today or off to church. So just leave a message and say, hey, I want to talk with an advisor about retirement. And on Monday morning, somebody will call you back and we'll set up a conversation and see how we can help you.
Hey, and we'll circle around to Barry's a terrific advisor, and you need to be a good client. So when you get the call, remember to check those voicemails, check those text messages, give them a call back if they've called you. Barry mentioned that number, 417-200-3500. If you're not much of a telephone person like for me, I might always check the voicemail. Well, should I pick this up? Or like, I know it's Barry, let me answer this, or listen to it and call him right back. But also when you call them and meet, and get a copy of Barry's book that you can read anytime if you're not so much of a phone or text person, Watts on Wealth. And Barry, how do we get a copy of the book?
Well, simple thing to do is when you reach out to us off the show today, we will send you a book. So you might just tell somebody when you call that you'd also like a copy of the book, or you can text the word book, B-O-O-K. And when you text the word book, well, then we will ship a copy of it out to you next week. So just text the word book to 417-200-3500, 417-200-3500, and you'll find a copy of the book in the mail to you next week.
Awesome. Well, we're near the top of the hour, but not nearly to the end of our hour. Another half to go here. Stick around. We'll be back in just a few minutes here with more of Watts on Wealth.
Worried about whether your savings will see you through retirement? If you're asking yourself questions like, have I saved enough, or will my retirement last? It's time to talk with Barry Watts. Simply text VISIT to 417-200-3500. That's text VISIT to 417-200-3500 and arrange your visit today. Life is full of uncertainties, but your retirement plan should not be one of them. Don't let market fluctuations dictate your future. Contact Barry Watts to secure your retirement today at 417-200-3500. Again, that's 417-200-3500.
All righty, as promised, as advertised, here's the next half of our show. Glad you're with us for our Sunday hour with Barry Watts of the Wealth Care Corporation. This is Ralph Hipp. Barry and I are talking about you're fired, when it's time to fire your financial advisor. And if you do that, and we would encourage you to make contact with Barry at 417-200-3500, see if Barry might be a right fit for you. Barry, we've talked about people, they don't return the calls or return the texts, or they say, you're not right for me. You know, I like you, I like working with you, but I think I need to go in a different direction. Many people then find it's very awkward, very tough to make the move and can their financial advisor, one they've worked with for years perhaps. So let's start this part of the show. Do you have any suggestions to help those people with the process? How do we just don't like to fire people. How do we handle that?
Well, it can be uncomfortable. I'm thinking about the people who told me that they just felt like they'd outgrown their advisor. And actually, there were two different people who told me that. One of them was a family from up around Clinton, and another one was a family who lived here in Springfield but had an advisor in Kansas City. And what they discovered is they just had more needs as retirees than their advisors were providing for. They were wonderful people. They just weren't giving them what they needed. And so here's what I want to say to you. It's just business. Don't let it be personal. Though you may feel a great affection for your financial advisor, at the end of the day, it comes down to dollars and cents and whether or not they are looking out for you in all of the ways that they ought to be looking out for you in retirement and dealing with all of the issues that you're having to deal with. You need holistic advice that touches all of those different things. And if they're not providing it, you have to go get it somewhere. So don't let the fact that you love them cause you to say, well, I'll just do without the things I need. Instead, go ahead and get the things you need. And the way you do that sometimes is by saying, I feel like I've just outgrown what they're providing, and I'm going to move on toward a holistic advisor who gives me the resources I need.
And there may be the situation you like them, but you're not sure that you can afford them. Hopefully, if you have good long periods of abundance, part of that money can go for your the payment of the fees for great financial advice and future planning. Over the years, Barry, even those little bitty fees and expenses, they add up over time and eat away at a big portion of our retirement savings. So imagine you're losing money simply because of the hidden costs that add up over time with your advisor. So Barry, on that front, how can people around the Ozarks get a better handle on what they're paying for the advice that they get?
Well, first thing that came to mind to me, Ralph, was Fidelity Investments produced a study, and I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately, so I can't quote it exactly. But the question they were asking in the study is, are people better off with an advisor or without an advisor? And they found that there was about a 3 percentage point per year difference in overall performance of a client who used an advisor versus one who didn't use an advisor. And so, of course, you're going to have to pay for that advisor and you're going to pay a fee, and you should expect to do that. One of the things I think you should do is you should sit down with your advisor and you should ask for a full explanation of all fees. And when they finish explaining it, by the way, here's where I would also read their body language, read the tone in their voice and see, are they comfortable with the question, or did they question, is it making them uncomfortable and they want to change the subject? That's a clue to you right there. But when they give you whatever explanation they have about fees, when they get done, then you say, is that all? And you wait for an answer. And then you say, are there any other fees? So the point is, make them cough up all the fees. Now, here's the problem. Many advisors don't know all the fees that are hidden in the investments they distribute to the public. You might think that that shouldn't be that way, and I would say it shouldn't, but I'm just telling you it is. They don't know where to find it. I will tell you, they don't get any training on how to have these conversations because they really just want to change the subject and not talk about it if they can. And so I think if your advisor squirms or hesitates or changes the subject, that's a warning sign that you ought to pay attention to. There's another warning sign, though. If the answer is, well, the fees don't matter, it's just all about the returns. Yeah, well, so go ahead and tell me about my fees, because that could well mean that you're paying too much if they say the fees don't matter, it's all about the returns. Fees matter. Let's be honest. Fees definitely matter. I mean, you need to get value for your fees. And fortunately, at the Wealth Care Corporation, we're able to demonstrate value for fees, and we do so proudly and gladly. We're glad to charge a fee. That's how we employ the 19 families who actually make their living out of our company serving our clients.
So knowing about the fees is critical. Many people find investment risk to be even more important to them. So every investment does come with some risk out there, making people uneasy. What is my risk level? It's a big question here. How can people be sure that their advisor is giving them advice that matches with their comfort level of their market risk or portfolio risk?
Well, I find that people hate this question, Ralph. What's your risk tolerance?
And why is
sometimes
that?
they'll just ask it that way. What's your risk tolerance?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't climb tall buildings and stand on the edge. And, I don't jump out of airplanes at 5 miles high in the sky. People don't know how to think about it. Now, our industry, the financial industry, doesn't know how to articulate it. For example, one of the things that they will ask you about your risk tolerance, Ralph, is they'll say, well, would you say you're a growth investor or an income investor? Well, my answer would be yes. I like both of those. Well, would you say you're an aggressive investor or a conservative investor? Yes, I am both of those. So having to check boxes and label yourself in that way isn't very helpful. I prefer to speak about it in miles per hour. Think about risk in miles per hour, because here's what we know. If you're driving your car at 1 mile an hour and you have an accident, it doesn't really tear very much up. Nobody really probably gets hurt. A 1 mile an hour accident isn't a very significant accident. But if you're driving your car 99 miles an hour and you have an accident, oh my goodness. Not only does it destroy the car, but it may well kill you and other people. So we have a range of reality from 1 miles an hour to 99 miles an hour. And what we ask clients to do is to think in their mind about their investment, their retirement accounts as a basket of goods. We're going to take those baskets of all your retirement monies. We're going to put them in the back seat of the car. We're going to drive it down the highway. How fast do you want us to drive the car? And some people can answer clearly, and some people even struggle with that. But they will come up with an answer that is appropriate for them. And then one of the next things we're going to do is we're going to take their existing investments, and we've got a piece of software that we can feed all their investments into, and it will actually spit out a result that tells us how many miles per hour their investments are going. And it's really interesting. Sometimes their investments are very close to what they said that was comfortable with them, and other times what they said they were comfortable with and the speed at which their investments are going are miles apart. And so it's really good to think about how fast do you want to drive, how much risk are you willing to incur driving at that speed, and then to test your investments and see what speed they're going. And what we do is we try to match people's preferred speed that they said they wanted to go to the investments that we point them toward.
Barry, do you think in hiring or firing your financial advisor that the first place to start is your risk? Is that the opening conversation?
No, I don't think so. Risk is a part of the conversation. I think you start with why you're asking the question. You don't start talking to them. You start by talking to yourself. Why are you even considering this? What's going on? And my guess is if you'll just get quiet and think, you'll come up with some things that are going on that are bothering you.
Okay.
And things that you think they should be helping you with that they aren't, or things that didn't get done that should have been things of that nature. So I think that's the best way to approach it, is to stop and ask yourself what's bothering you. And then you can come up with the right questions to ask the advisor that are specific to the things that are unsettled in your own heart.
Good time for me to mention Barry is well known for his 6 Steps to Retirement Confidence, which you can be a part of. And when you join his team by calling 417-200-3500, 200-3500, not far away. They're right here in Springfield. Well, we all hope the advice we get is beneficial for them. And what are some of the ways people can make sure their advisor is really looking out for their best interests in having these conversations? And when you're talking and having all kinds of happy and good things talked about, does that necessarily make that advisor a fiduciary?
Well, no, it doesn't make them a fiduciary, Ralph. I think it is a good question to ask. Are you a fiduciary? Some advisors are, some aren't.
Come right out with it.
Many people don't know what that means. They don't know what a fiduciary is. And simply put, all it means is that they're putting your interests ahead of their own. They're making the same decision for you that they would make for themselves if they were in your position. Now, personally, I prefer an advisor with a little gray hair and a larger business. Gray hair meaning, of course, that they've been around a while. They've seen some things. They know some things. I love the energy that young people bring, and we have some young advisors at the Wealth Care Corporation. But one of the things that I have to do for them is I bring the gray hair into the room and say, now, guys, let me tell you how this applies and how it fits together. And then with regard to the size of their business, you want a business that has some substance to it. I just happened to meet with an advisor earlier this week, and the total amount of money they had under advice was $9 million. Now, you may say, oh, that's a lot of money. No, not really. I mean, at the Wealth Care Corporations, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of $250 million under advisement. And you've got to know what that means, because what happens is a newly minted advisor who's gone to work with one of those big Wall Street firms could say, well, our firm manages $200 billion. Well, that's true. but he just got his job last week and he's not responsible for any of that $200 billion. So if you're looking for an independent firm, which I think is a good idea, our firm is independent. We're beholden to no one but our clients. If you're looking for an independent firm, then I think it's a good idea to know what that firm has under management, what kind of money they deal with. I want them to have a larger amount, which means they've got more experience doing more things. At WealthCare, here's the deal, Ralph. We're not looking for the next transaction to pay our mortgage payment. I'm not worried about bread and milk money for next week or next month or even next year. And that means that we're able to sit back and make the right decision for the client that will be best for them over time. In the end, what I would say is trust your gut. You know when your gut's talking to you what kind of impression it's giving you. Trust your gut and follow what your gut is instructing you to do.
Friends, as you're listening to our hour, that wraps up our conversation on firing your financial advisor. And if you're looking to hire one or fire one, we've given you some great advice on what to go over when you have that first conference. What do I want to talk about? And then get to the level of risk, but where you are financially before you make any changes. And do you want to do it yourself? Is doing it yourself better? Probably not, but you can have a discussion with Barry. We would encourage you to get him into the conversation. Give him a call, text the word visit this Sunday, or give him a call Monday morning, 417-200-3500. Watts on Wealth returns right after we come back from this break.
Are questions about your financial future, such as, have I saved enough, or will my money last, keeping you up at night? Reach out to Barry Watts by texting VISIT to 417-200-3500. Again, that's text the word VISIT to 417-200-3500 to schedule your consultation today. Do you think you'll pay lower taxes in retirement? Really? Many people go into retirement assuming that, but end up paying as much, if not more, in taxes than when they were working. How taxes can affect your retirement is one of the chapters in Watts on Wealth, the latest book written by local tax strategist and retirement designer Barry Watts of the WealthCare Corporation. Barry takes you through the many tax considerations you should make before you retire. To get your free copy of Watts on Wealth, the book, call 417-200-3500 or go to wattswealth.com. The book is full of actionable retirement tips and strategies Barry has gathered from his more than 30-year career in helping families just like yours retire successfully. Get your free copy of Watts on Wealth, the book, now by calling 417-200-3500 or go to wattswealth.com. Advisory services provided through WealthCare Asset Management, LLC. Life is full of uncertainties, but your retirement plan should not be one of them. Don't let market fluctuations dictate your future. Contact Barry Watts to secure your retirement today at 417-200-3500. Again, that's 417-200-3500.
Well, as we close another terrific Watts on Wealth show, let's open up our mailbag and go over some of your common retirement questions. Barry, question number one. How much would you recommend I would set aside, Barry, every year for retirement if I'm planning to retire in 2035 in 10 more years?
So let me get the question right, Ralph. You're saying you're going to retire in 10 years. You want to know how much money you need to set aside every year for retirement.
Every year. Yeah.
All right. How about we start with $1 million a month?
Well, sure. Let's do that. If we can.
Forgive me, Ralph. I love our listeners. Sometimes I think they aren't thinking quite as accurately as they ought to. And here's why. I don't know anything about you. I don't know how much money you need to spend. I don't know what it costs you to live. I don't know how much money you've already got. Maybe you don't need to set aside any. So the question is not how much money do you need to set aside? The question is, how many dollars do you want in retirement income when you retire? We call that sitting on the porch money. Now, you may not sit on the porch when you retire, but you also might. And it would be good to have a few days to probably just sit on the porch and ponder the purpose of life. So that question, how many dollars do you want in retirement when you retire? How much income do you need coming into your bank account? That is the beginning question that drives all the math. And if somebody can't tell me what they want, then I don't know how to help them because they don't know where they want to go and what they're trying to accomplish. So you have to be able to answer that question. That's what you should start with, is what do you want your retirement income to be? And then we figure out, do you have enough money accumulated to meet your retirement income goal, your sitting on the porch goal, or do you need to save some more money? And then we can figure out how much you need to save.
Sure. Sounds good. All right. Here's another good one. Can you talk with me more, Barry, about what goes into a written financial strategy for my retirement? I'd like something like a checklist so I make sure I have everything covered. And with the checklist, and also, Barry, I'd like to add, how would that fit into your 6 steps to retirement confidence?
Well, Ralph, I don't know how other people do it. I mean, there are a lot of people who call themselves retirement planners or financial planners, and you say, well, show me a plan. Well, they don't really have one. They reach back on their desk and they pull out some brochure from some mutual fund company and walk you through it and tell you how it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I can tell you how we do it at the Wealth Care Corporation. It's all wrapped up in what we call 6 steps to retirement confidence, 6 very precise steps, starting with step number 1, which is income. How much income do you want in retirement? How much income do you have coming in from Social Security and pensions or any other sources? And therefore, how much do you have to take out of your investments to meet your target income requirement, your sitting on the porch number? And so everything should start with that income step. And we want to do it not just for this year, but we want to fast forward to next year and say, so what's your income going to need to be next year with regard to the fact that, the cost of living has increased because of inflation? And then we want to look at the year after that, and 5 years and 10 years and 15 and 20 and 25 and 30 years. We actually, in our plans, design the income and say, 30 years from now, here's what your income is going to need to be. Do you have the resources to cover that? That's what the income step is. Next step we look at is the tax step. What kind of taxes are you paying now? And is there any way to pay less? What kind of taxes are you going to pay in the future? And is there any way to reduce or eliminate the taxes you pay in the future? It's wonderful when we can get our clients down to the 0% tax bracket, and about a third of them are there. I always am reminded, Ralph, when I say that people could be confused and they could think that if you're in the 0% tax bracket, it means you don't have much income. That's absolutely not true. You can make $1 million a year in income and still be in the 0% tax bracket if you structure your income properly. Third step we look at is protecting your principal. Ralph, when you retire, you just can't subject yourself to the risks of a volatile stock market. You have to have some money that won't get away, no matter what happens in the markets. And we've got a process we go through with you to help you figure out how much money you want in the form of protected principal versus what portion of money can you allow to kind of float up and down with the markets. But we don't want to float up and down like a roller coaster. We want to float up and down like a merry-go-round. After that, we look at long-term care. And do you have a plan to pay for your long-term care? What is that plan? How are we going to solve that problem? That is step number 4. Step number 5 is your estate plan. Have you got your assets set up to go where you want them to go, or what needs to be done to make that happen? And how do you pass on the things you have that are so precious that money can't buy them and death can't destroy them? Because there are closely held values you want to be sure your great-grandchildren have. How do you communicate those to them? So there's 5 steps right there, Ralph. Now, the 6th step is once a year we get together for what we call a strategy session. And what we do in that session is we look back at each of the 5 steps and we say, do you still have the amount of income that you need? Is everything fine? Do you need a raise? Or maybe you have too much income and you're putting it in the bank and you need to not take it out of your investments in the first place. We look at your taxes. We look at your tax return. We evaluate the return. Is there any adjustment that needs to be made to minimize taxes for you? We even look at your estate plan every year. And one of the questions I ask is, do you have any in-laws that have become outlaws? Because maybe we need to adjust your estate plan to protect against the outlaws.
That's right. Yeah.
We go through those 5 steps over and over again each time we meet in step number 6, the strategy session.
Well, we love that 3-legged stool where we have our retirement accounts and hopefully have a pension from our company and Social Security. And this person writes, on one of those factors, Barry, I worked at the same company for 25 years and had a 401k there. They've had a big merger now, and I'm not sure how to track down that account. Do you have any tips on that?
Well, yeah, I do have a tip. When you leave your employer, move your 401k to your personal self-directed IRA account. Because that keeps it under your control and not under your employer's control. You say, well, it'd be fine over at the employer. It doesn't cost much and they're taking good care of it and so forth. What happens when that employer falls on hard times? And what happens when there's nobody in the office and HR answering the phone so you can't make the adjustments you need? What happens in some cases when those plans get frozen and then you're frozen out. So the simple solution to all that is when you leave an employer, you roll your money over from their 401k into your IRA account. There's no tax when you do that. It's a tax-free rollover, and that way you'll always know where your money is and you'll have control of your money. Ralph, for people who think they might have some money out there and they don't know how to get a hold of it, they don't know how to search for it or find it, there are a couple of things that I would suggest. First of all, you could Google up the words National Registry of Unclaimed Retirement Benefits. National Registry of Unclaimed Retirement Benefits. Or you could go to the U.S. Department of Labor's Abandoned Plan Database for the Department of Labor, the Abandoned Plan Database. And those are two places that you could look for money that you thought you had, but you don't know where it is and it might be missing.
Two questions there of, where is the money? Then what do I do with it? So Barry, thanks for that. Very good question there. A lot of you might be in that situation. Okay, our next person writes in, our next fan says, Barry, I've done a pretty darn good job keeping track of my budget and my finances my entire adult life. Good for you on that. Why is it so important to have somebody else do the budgeting for me in retirement?
Well, Ralph, I think the reason this becomes important, and by the way, congratulations on doing a really, really good job of that up to this time. But what you've got to do is you've got to think about the next 30 years and what kind of experience do you have projecting income and expenses over 30 years. That's what we do professionally every day in our practice. And so when your income is no longer coming from a paycheck, but rather it's coming from your savings account, from your retirement account, then what kind of experience do you have making withdrawals from an account in a year where it loses 30% in 1 year? Maybe you need a plan that would affect that so you could actually continue to get the withdrawals you need instead of freezing up and starting to look for another job. And then I think you should ask yourself this: what steps have you already taken to reduce your income tax in retirement? And if you haven't taken any steps yet, well, why haven't you taken any steps? That's central to one of the things that you ought to be doing. Even this question: what is your plan to pay for long-term care? Now, if you know, you know, but Ralph, I'm a professional and I hire experts to help me. Lately, I've been working on my own personal estate plan, and it's kind of complicated. And sometimes it's important that I get outside perspective to help me think through things. And so I have an attorney who actually lives in Florida who's working on my own estate plan for me. Now, you may or may not need an attorney who's in Florida. There may be people right here in town who are good to help you. We can help you figure out what it is that you need to do and where you need to go. So the point is, an outside perspective is very valuable. And I would recommend that you engage with someone who is an expert in this space and get their perspective on your situation.
Which leads very well into our final question for the show, Barry. My dad's always on social media worrying himself to death over every little thing. There's some big scary headline he shares with everybody all the time. Oh, did you see that? And I don't think it's healthy for him. Can you share with me how to talk him about the financial news that seems to be scaring him all the time and have him worry all the time?
Well, I would suggest you scramble his password to Facebook.
Good idea.
And that way he won't be able to log into social media and get all that crazy news that really isn't valid. Look, Ralph, people have to be big boys and girls. They've got to be able to discern truth from fiction, and they've got to know when they're being had. My best advice is develop a solid retirement income plan that guarantees you income for all of your lifetime. And then you don't have to be afraid of crazy news. So you can say, hey, Dad, it doesn't matter if X or Y or Z happens because your income check is guaranteed. And hopefully that will allow him to take a little pressure off and realize he doesn't need to make a mistake and suddenly write 10 hot letters to his congressman today and panic and go sit with his banker and his investment broker and look at his accounts today. He can enjoy a beautiful spring day and be preparing his crappie lures or his white bass lures for the run that is to come very soon in the Ozarks.
Don't go for the crazy stuff, folks. Go for the real legitimate stuff. And Barry, thanks for a great hour. We've enjoyed the Watts on Wealth. And anything from down on the farm you'd like to mention for our listeners and our fans?
It was a great hour. I would say if you've got chickens, guard them carefully because, those eggs are expensive.
Golden eggs. And friends, hope you'll text the word visit today at 417-200-3500 or give Barry a call first thing tomorrow. Thanks for joining us for our show. Thank you, Barry. And this is Ralph Hipp, and for the whole crew at the Wealth Care Corporation, we appreciate you joining us for our latest Watts on Wealth.
Thank you for stopping by Watts on Wealth. If you would like Barry and his team to help you make a plan,
to get to and through retirement, or would simply like a second opinion on your current plan? Give us a call today at 417-200-3500. That's 417-200-3500. And join us again next week for Watts on Wealth.
WealthCare Corporation provides tax strategy, tax compliance, accounting, and insurance services through its affiliate American Tax Strategies, LLC. Investment advisory services are provided by WealthCare Asset Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Past performance never guarantees future results. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for information and entertainment purposes only and should not be used as the basis for personal financial decisions without first consulting a qualified advisor. The information and opinions you've heard are believed reliable but cannot be guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness.